Do you ever feel like you almost got the right answer in algebra, but somehow ended up way off? Today we're going to look at the 3 most common mistakes that students make when solving simple equations, and more importantly, how to avoid them. Let's jump in. It's important to first review the golden rule of solving equations, and that is this. Whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. Here's mistake number 1, not doing the same thing to both sides. So we're going to look at 2 ways that this is done wrong, followed by the correct way to do this. The first way it's done wrong is this. People just go ahead and they drop the 5. So if you just drop the 5, we get 3x equals 11, which gives me x is equal to 11 divided by 3, which is not correct. A second way to do this is they say, well, I have to do something with the 5. How do I get rid of the 5? Well, if I have 5, let's add 5 more. Well, it already had 5. You're not going to add 5 more than that. But if we continue along that wrong path, we'd add 5 to both sides. Now you notice here, I like to write it up in the top right-hand corner. Some people like to write it below like this. However you want to write it, it's the same thing. We're doing that to both sides. We're going to add 5 to both sides. And so we're going to get 3x. And then the 5 plus 5 they say is 0. And then they get 11 plus 5. They say, well, that's going to be 16, which gives me x equals 16 over 3. And that is also incorrect. And so what you actually need to do here is you actually need to go ahead and subtract 5 from both sides. If I have a positive 5, I need to subtract it to make it 0. You do the opposite operation, and then you do that to both sides. So the opposite operation of adding 5 is subtracting 5. So whatever I do to the left side, I'm going to do to the right side. That's going to cancel out, and I'm going to be left with 3x equals 11 minus 5 is 6. Now if I divide by 3, I get x equals 2. Now, that is the correct way to do it, but one handy way to remember this is that if you get an answer that seems to be a nice whole number, oftentimes the answers will work out to be nice whole numbers. Not always, but often they will. And so if you get an ugly fraction, oftentimes that will be a situation where you did something wrong. Mistake number 2 is sign mistakes with negatives. Here's the wrong way to solve negative 2x equals 10. A number of people might say this. They would say either you divide by 2, and that would be x is equal to positive 5. Or the other thing they might do is this. They might say because I have the negative 2x equals 10, we're going to add 2 to both sides. And if they did that, they would say, well, then x is going to be equal to 12. Those are both wrong. Here's the correct way to do this. Now, in that first method, we were actually more correct than the second method. And the reason for that is this. What we have to do is we have to do the opposite operation of what's being done to the x. The opposite operation of negative 2 times x is dividing by negative 2. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. The negative 2 cancels out with the negative 2 and leaves you with x equals 10 over negative 2, which is negative 5. That is the correct answer for that situation. Now, why is the situation on the left up above wrong? Well, the reason that's wrong is this adding 2 is actually not the opposite operation. The operation is multiplying, and adding is a completely separate situation. Only if we're subtracting do we add, not when we're multiplying. What about 2x plus 3 equals 0? Well, I'm going to show you first off the correct way to do this, and then we'll look at the wrong way. The correct way to do this is we subtract 3 first. We always add or subtract before we multiply or divide. And then we get 2x is equal to negative 3. And now we divide by 2, the opposite operation of multiplying by 2. And we get x equals negative 3 over 2. So that's the correct way to do this. What about the wrong ways? How do those look? So students start jumping to an answer often when they have something equal to 0. And so here's what they might do. They might tell me this. They might say x is equal to 2/3. Or they might get closer and say x is equal to positive 3 over 2. But you can see that neither one of those are negative 3 over 2. So take the time to first add or subtract and then multiply or divide once you get the x terms on the one side and the non-x terms to the other, even if it's set equal to 0. The third common mistake I see students making with simple algebra problems is this, messing up the distributive property. So how do you do this wrong? Well, if you have 2 times x plus 3 equals 10, here's often what students will write. 2x plus 3 equals 10. Then they go ahead and they do everything right from that point, but they've made a mistake from there. So they say, I'm going to subtract 3. That's correct based on what we've done before. So we get 7. And so 2x equals 7. We divide both sides by 2. And so we get x equals 7 over 2, which is 3.5. That's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because you need to distribute the 2 not only to the x, that's all they did in the example there, they also need to distribute it to the 3. 2 times x and 2 times 3. The distributive property is times everything in the brackets. So this becomes 2x plus 6 equals 10. And now what I need to do is I need to subtract 6 from both sides to isolate the variable. So I get the 6's canceling off the left, and I get 2x equals 10 minus 6 is 4. Now we divide by 2, and I get x equals 2. And that is the correct answer. Let's recap how to avoid the 3 big mistakes. First, always do the same thing to both sides. Second, be careful with negative signs. And third, use the distributive property by applying the number to all terms in the brackets that follow. Now that you know how to avoid these sneaky equation mistakes, you're one step closer to mastering algebra. If this helped you out, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more math tips that actually make sense. And don't miss out on the hundreds of video lessons on common high school math topics on this channel. Got a question or math mistake you used to make? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you and maybe even feature your question in a future video. Keep solving, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.